For the Webasto heater, I built this little test bed platform because what I want to do is install it on the workbench, make sure everything works, and then I'll disassemble it and install it in the van. I do have what could be a problem, which is a 3-inch hole. That's the same diameter of the hole that already exists in the van for the vent fan that I put in when I originally built the van. After building this, I've discovered that it'll be close, but it might just work. It could just fit that 3-inch hole. I actually took a piece of this thin plywood and cut the same size hole, and it will fit just, I mean, not much playroom at all. But that could be enough. Kind of show you what I did here. This is the electrical cable that will have to be run in the van. This is the cable that goes to the smart temp. This is the fuel pump right here. And underneath this bench, I have a gas tank with about half a gallon of fuel in it. I primed this pump with a large syringe first, got the fuel up to here, and now I can actually feel this clicking and pumping. And I bought a different fuel line because I didn't want to cut the original one that came with the unit. And this fuel line happens to be almost clear, so I can actually see the fuel moving through. What's really nice about this unit is that it is Bluetooth enabled, so I can control the entire thing from Bluetooth. So now that I know that it works properly, the next step is to run those wires and to install it into the van. Now I'm running the electrical cables for the heater, and they're in this loom. There's 2 of them. I've got one of them run already, and the second one is for the thermostat. I've wrapped it so that it doesn't get caught on anything with some painter's tape, and I'm going to hook it on a little snake and pull it through there, hopefully. We'll see that in a minute. You can see when I originally built the van, I put some PEX pipe in here in order to run some electrical lines, and these electrical lines are for the DC to DC charger that run to the back, and this 12 gauge line is for the vent fan, which I'm no longer going to have. So right now I've got this one pulled through, and now I need to pull this one through. I've pulled this part way through. It did make it to the other side, but I've got a lot more to pull. All right, I actually did get this snake through. I kept trying to push it through, and it was already out. It was already to the end and couldn't go any further. So I just had to reach in there and pull it out. All right, I've got the second wire. I'm going to pull through there. Hopefully it goes well. This is actually the skinnier one. I tried the thick one first. Figured I'd try to do what I thought was the more difficult one first, and what should be easy is the skinnier one. So let's take a look at where those wires went. This is the shower, the refrigerator, and right here, this is the recirculating shower area. I've got everything pulled apart, even have the wall panels off. And that came along. The bottom of the ProMaster has an excellent channel, 4 wires just like this. And this is the wire we just pulled. I haven't even disconnected it yet. And here's the first one we pulled. This one is for power. And that one is going to go all along here and go back to where the electrical is. This is the wheel well box, and our batteries sit here. And then the other wire is going to go up the wall here, behind the wall panel, and into what I call my charging cabinet, because this is where we charge all of our devices. We've got a bunch of outlets here with USB ports and also electrical. But on the side here, we've got all our switches. So I'll probably put that control panel right up here. One of the great things about creating these custom insulation panels is that you can remove them, run your wires, and then reinstall them. So that's exactly what I did. I removed this panel right here to run this wire because I didn't know where it was going to go. So it's tucked in right here. But now I can put my piece of insulation and panel right back in there. And it fits. And I also got 2 blocks over here, there and there, that after I manage these wires right here, I can just slide those back in place. And there's no mold on the insulation panels on either side. That's the blue. And there's no mold on the walls. And these panels have been in place for more than 3 years. This is the fish tape that I use to pull that wire through. Highly recommend you get one of these. You're going to need it somewhere along the line. They're not very expensive, about $20. I'll put a link in the description. You know, you can get them from Amazon, you can get them from Lowe's or Home Depot. All about the same price when I was looking. I got the 50-foot one, but of course you really only need the 25-foot version for the van. I'm about to mount the Webasto controller. It's very disappointing, the large size of these plugs. So it calls for a 17 millimeter or an 11/16 inch drill. Well, I don't have that, but I have 3/4, which is, I believe, 12/16. That's a big hole to put in. And it can't go in the center. It's got to go off to the side. So it won't be completely covered by the controller. So I really think they could have done a better job by using smaller, you know, like USB, micro USB size. I'm sure they could do that. These wires are very small. It would have been much easier to do the mounting. So I taped off and traced where it's going to be, and that's approximately where I have to drill my hole. I placed a bucket down here to catch as much sawdust as possible. I mean, really, that's an unusually large hole. It's ridiculous. It doesn't need to be that big for this little controller, but it does because I use large connectors. So now they'll of course easily fit through there. So it's going to mount just like that. That's what we're about. There we go, it's mounted. Now I'm going to put the 2 little covers back on. On the wiring harness, there were fuse holders that had these plastic covers. I took the covers off because, as you can see, it would have been hard to pull them through with the covers on. So I pulled them off, and I used painter's tape to tape these nice and close to the wire as I pulled it through. So now I'm going to put these back on, but also make sure that you have spare fuses. That's a 5-amp fuse, and that's a 20-amp fuse. I would carry 2 or 3 spares just in case. So I'm going to snap these back on, and then I'm going to put a connector on here to connect it to the electrical. So I've decided that that power cable will come up across the top here and come down and it's going to tie right into this 100 amp fuse, which supplies the DC 12 volt fuse box right here. And then the negative will come down and tie right into my negative bus bar here. So I've marked my wire right here where I'm going to cut it. And then up here, I need to trim the insulation all the way up to here because I just want the red positive wire to connect here. So there's a length of the red wire that's inside here that I'll be able to cut off. I got my power cable made. I've got an Anderson type connector on this side, and I measured, put my negative and positive at the right distance to connect it up to the bus bars and to my electrical panel. So that's what we're doing now. And of course the power is off, but as you should realize, there's no batteries in the van right now. So there's no electrical at all. All right, that's the positive. The negative is going to go right down here. Take these nuts off. All right, now the only thing left is to zip tie the wires. I actually left the extra insulation that was on here because from here down is only that negative wire, but it was on there nice and tight, and I figured I might as well leave it. It's not going to hurt anything, and it might look a little better. As you can see right here, I've got my hole. Problem is it's only 3 inches and it needs to be 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that wooden piece, which I just cut using the hole saw, and I'm going to glue it in here. And then tomorrow I can use that piece to be able to drill the new 4-inch piece because the arbor will go in the center. So I'm hoping that works out well. Well, as you can see, I glued that wooden plug in there, and it is now the next day, so it has hardened up and the glue is cured. And now we're going to go on the bottom side and we're going to drill our hole. This is a 3-inch hole, definitely too small. We need at least a 4-inch hole. So here we are on the bottom, and you see the wooden plug, and I'm going to try to drill this hole as far forward and inside as I can using all of the original hole. So my saw will be right on the edge here, and I'll get a little bit more of the van right here on this side. It is a tight fit right here. Now, if you have a ProMaster, just so you know where I'm at, this right here is the fill for the gas tank. So we're on the driver's side, just behind the driver's door. And you'll easily be able to see where this spot is. This right here is the emergency brake cable. Well, now it looks like I need to go from the top. All right, the hole is in, and honestly, this worked out better and a little easier than I expected. I mean, yeah, cutting this hole was kind of tough, and if you just run the hole saw slowly and patiently, it goes well. If you try to rush it or press too hard, it's going to buck on you. So, you know, if you're doing this, take your time, let the saw do the work, and you'll get through it. It just takes a little time. And then I went from the bottom at first, and then I had to go from the top a little bit, and then right at the end I went from the bottom and cleaned up the hole nicely. So we're gonna file this down a little bit. It's got a few sharp edges, and then paint it and seal it. I'm gonna put some sealer in here, and then there's a steel, galvanized steel sleeve that I got that I'm going to put in here. I'm actually making that up myself from AC vent material. I'm going to spray it with this self-etching automotive primer because that happens to be what I have on hand. I would just use normal primer, but this will work. And after that dries, I'm also going to coat it with this protective enamel paint. It's oil-based. I happen to have black, which will be fine. Then this sleeve, it's a 4-inch flex pipe connector for air conditioning. So I bought this sleeve, so I'm going to fashion this sleeve so I have a steel sleeve that goes inside. I know you can actually buy something made for this heater, but I'm going to use this because it's quick and it's easy, and I have the tools to do it, so this will work fine. This 4-inch steel AC sleeve works really well, fits perfectly. This little bump right here, I'm going to push it down in there so that it goes all the way to the bottom, and it fits right up against the steel. And I'll put some sealant around it before I actually put it in. Now I need to trim this and also trim the bottom. So I've drawn myself some lines right there. Well, it's not pretty, but it'll work. I put 2 little tabs to bend over on the top and the bottom. And if I don't want to use them, I can just cut them off. So now we're going to file it down and give it a coat of primer. There it is with a coat of primer. Actually, I think it looks better primed up. But it really doesn't matter because once it's installed, I won't see it. So let's get to it, get that installed, and continue on. The steel sleeve is inserted, and I sealed it up with Lexel all the way around. So we should be good. It ain't pretty, but it'll work. Installing this is really not that difficult. It's just a little time consuming. So I'm going to go over what all of the connections are. So this connection right here, this is the exhaust pipe. It gets very hot. It is installed onto the heater with the very large steel clamp. The other clamp, which is actually the only hose clamp in the entire system, goes around the air intake. The air intake is flimsy aluminum. This is a very rigid, substantial steel. You can't mix these up because this aluminum wouldn't take the heat and it would get very brittle and fail. Then you have where your fuel connection is right here. You're going to have to take one of those little extender connectors and put it on here with the fuel clamps. Now the fuel clamps are not normal hose clamps. They're a special animal. They're a little bit different than a regular hose clamp. So if you need fuel clamps, make sure you get those. They provide 360 degrees of pressure, and a normal hose clamp won't do that. I'll put in this video a close-up and show you the difference. definitely you need the fuel pump clamp. All right. Then, of course, you're going to connect your fuel line. Now, this fuel line I purchased separately. This is not the one that comes with the Webasto heater. All right. The one that comes with it's black, and that's actually installed in the van. I've already run that line. I bought this temporarily just so I could test this whole system out. So I'm not going to use this, although I kind of like it because it's clear and you can see the fuel. But I'm going to use the original Webasto provided fuel pump. Then, I should say fuel hose. Then this wire right here connects up to the actual fuel pump. All right, and it connects up to this cable that leads to the fuel pump. And there's a little metal piece that you push down on, and that simply connects like that. The other end of this line actually connects up to the fuel pump. Okay, now when this fuel pump runs, it kind of clicks, and that clicking noise is kind of interesting, and some people complain they heard a clicking noise in their van because the old way of attaching this to the van was rigid. So that little clicking noise would kind of vibrate through the van. So now they have a rubber piece that slides over this, and you attach that to the body of the van. Now, this fuel line and this fuel pump is going to be outside the van underneath. That's important to understand. Then somewhere along the line, you also have to put in this fuel filter. Some people say it's an optional thing, you don't really need it, but you really don't want some bad fuel clogging this thing up or some dirt from the bottom of your fuel tank clogging up your brand new heater. So I highly recommend you put this someplace that you're going to be able to swap it out about once a year. So that's what you've got here. Of course, you've got to make sure all of this will fit through the hole in your van, and that's why I had to increase my 3-inch hole to a 4-inch hole. Then this little animal right here, get this apart, this fits over the auxiliary fuel line on the ProMaster. Then this piece right here is an adapter. It's actually wider here than it is here, and this fits over this right there. You don't want to lose this. If you wanted to replace this, I happened to see the price on Amazon, and it was $30 just for this little piece. All right, so that goes on there. Of course, you're going to have to put one of those fuel clamps over here and tighten it down, and then this is where your fuel line goes in. When I was doing the testing of this, I did not install the gasket. So before I go any further, I need to take this apart and install the gasket and then put this plate back on. I did that on purpose because I didn't want to stress or ruin this gasket in any way, because I've only got one of them. Before installing your heater, you might think about putting this 1/4-inch hole here. In this little slot that was here before the hole, you need to take this wire, which is the fuel pump wire, and slide it down in that slot. Now, without that hole there, this cable is constantly pinched. So now that we drilled that 1/4-inch hole, it can now slide down and sit in that hole and not have any pressure on the sides of the insulation. This was an idea from Vanlife Outfitters. I looked at their video, and I'll put a link to their video in the description of this video. It is installed. It is now screwed down, hooked up the electrical under this plastic cover. It just snaps on. Very important that you make sure it's seated very securely. It seems like it's in, but then there's an extra push, another 1/4 inch, and it will click in. And there are 2 cables in there. These cables that you see here are for the battery to battery charger, 4-gauge cables that go all the way to the back. This is a 12-gauge cable that provided 12 volts to the vent fan that I used to have here. I no longer need those, but we're of course going to leave them here because in the future, who knows, we might be able to use that 12 volts up here. So now we just have to go underneath and connect the fuel line and run the fuel line, exhaust lines, and the air intake line. So let's do that. Well, I'm under the van and I'm trying to find a place to put the fuel pump for the heater. And that's the fuel pump. And this is the rubber holder for the fuel pump. I thought maybe under this piece of metal right here, which covers the fuel fill. So I actually took this off. And this is where you fill the gas tank. And there's an extra little spot right here. And I thought maybe I can put the fuel pump under that spot. But after looking into it, there's really not enough room there. And this piece right here is just a piece of rubber in case there's an overspill. There's a little hole right here for the overspill to pour out. So that's not going to work. I've seen lots of videos of people installing these things, and I have not been real happy with their placement of the fuel line and the fuel pump. So I was trying to do something better, but honestly, I don't think that's going to happen. A lot of people are putting this fuel pump right here, which is probably where I'm going to put it, because the fuel line is going to come from the gas tank right there, right into the fuel pump, and then from the fuel pump, it's going to connect right here to that fuel line that goes right up into the heater. And the heater, you can see this is the air intake right here. So it's right above my finger there. But I want to protect this fuel pump from any road debris. So what I'm going to attempt to do is build a plexiglass piece that will be somewhat of a deflector. So this piece goes back up here. So let me install 1 bolt on this to hold this up. So that's where that piece is going to go. My fuel pump will probably go here, somewhere in this area right here. And using the 2 bolts from this piece here, I've made a piece of cardboard and I've cut it the way I like it to be. And that will go on here, and I will bend the plexiglass as a deflector. So that way, if any road debris comes up, it won't interfere. It won't hit that fuel pump, and it won't cause any problems with the fuel line. So I got my little cutout here, and I need to see if I've got a piece of plexiglass or polycarbonate. Really, it's got to be a polycarbonate. That's this size. All right, I've got this piece of polycarbonate. It's a piece of scrap from another project, and I think it'll do the trick because I put my line right here. This will cover it over, and this is thick enough and rigid enough that I don't need this extra part. This is where the curve began, and this is actually right where the heater comes out. So cutting it here is a good idea. So it's a little shorter than I wanted, but I think it's going to work really well. And since it's scrap, it's worth giving a try. We're going to make this kind of curvy here. That's where my hole's got to go. And once it's pliable, it'll bend right over. You just hold it there for a few seconds and you've got your bend. Now if you had a strip heater and you had accurate heating, you could avoid these little micro bubbles. But we're just using it for a shield, so it really doesn't matter. That's our first bend. I've decided on this next bend, I actually don't want it straight. This is the outside of the van, and I want this tipped up more so you can't see it when you're trying to look under the van. I want this a little more hidden. So I'm going to do this at somewhat of an angle, and it doesn't have to be 90 degrees. 45 would be fine, even 30 degrees would be good. Plus, if it's not what I want, I can heat it up and bend it again. I'm going to use a washer to keep this where I want it, just so it doesn't fall down. I'll do most of the holding with my own hands here. And then we just heat it up. So I'm hoping that's about the right angle. But if not, we'll check it and we'll do it again. Yeah, that's kind of goofy looking, but it might just do the trick. So that's it. 3 bends in there. Not a complex bends. Doesn't look pretty. It's going to do exactly what I want. Clean it up a little bit. If you didn't know, deep wood's off, or any kind of spray mosquito repellent like this Repel will clean off stickers. It cleans everything off of plastic. You got to be careful though. It can dissolve some plastics. I don't know why I'm cleaning it. It is just going under the van, but I don't know. Starting out clean. So this will be my deflector shield. Take a look here. This is the fuel line. I took and I ran this fuel line down straight to the back. There is a hole or a recess in the gas tank right there where you'll be able to push this fuel line straight through right to the center under the vehicle. After I put the fuel line in, from underneath, I put on this by pushing it up through from the bottom up. I found that much easier than trying to put these two together and push it through this way. So I recommend you slide this through from the top here, and then from the bottom you can cover it and push this back up through to protect that fuel line. And from down here, might be hard to tell where this is, but from down here, this is the center of the fuel tank. And here's that fuel line that runs down. And I'm going to run that fuel line up along the top of the tank. And it's going to come over here. And I'm going to actually take this and zip tie it probably to this bracket here up at the top. And then have it come around. And you can see where this is that metal piece that covers where the fill is for the fuel. And the fuel line will come right along here, and I'll cable tie it to these other lines. These fuel line clamps are different than stainless steel regular standard hose clamps. You see, they have this metal piece that curves around that ensures as you tighten this, it provides 360-degree pressure to the fuel line. So don't substitute standard stainless steel hose clamps. Get the ones for the fuel lines. They're only a few dollars. So this has to slide on here because this piece is going to go right to our auxiliary fuel port. The other thing is, if you take a little paste wax on your finger and just wipe it around the fuel line, or in this case the fuel filter, it will make sliding this together a lot easier. Also, you can see I placed my own arrow here. There's a very faint arrow impressed in the plastic showing the direction of the fuel. So I didn't make a mistake. I ensured that I would put it in the right way. I put my own arrow on there so I wouldn't forget. And then when you tighten these up, you want to tighten them up so that the steel comes right together right there. And that's when you know it's tight enough. And that isn't going anywhere. This one here. Get those both nice and tight. And now we're ready to install that. And of course, I got to install the fuel line over here. You remove this plate between the driver and passenger area to get to the auxiliary fuel port, which is on top of the gas tank, which you see here. So this cap right here needs to be removed. But what I've never seen anybody show is how to remove it. I pulled on it a little bit, can't get it off. I don't want to pull too hard because I don't want to break anything. And I figured it out. Let me move the camera a little bit. You take this, spin it around, you see these two little plastic pieces. On this one, they're green. Squeeze them and push them in, and it'll come out the other side. And when it does, then this will slide right off. And it's really easy. I hope that helps. Please give this video a thumbs up if it does. And here we go with more. On the fuel line here, if you rub just a little bit of paste wax, a little oil, or even a little spit on here, makes it a lot easier to slide it on to this hose line connector here. Now I know that's got to go in at least that far. And you try to push it in far enough
so that it's actually touching the other connection. I'm going to slide this out a little bit. And I know that those two are touching. And if you take a look at those three, those tabs are together. I really can't tighten it anymore. If I did, I might end up stripping out the nut. So I think that's good. And then this simply is going to slide in here, and we're going to snap that connector on. That connector goes right on top here, and it just pushes on just like this. Just push down, and that's it. And that filter is in here, and it's nice and protected in here, and it's something that should be replaced once a year. So that's it for this. We're good to go. I won't cover it up because I got to check for leaks, and I don't think there can be any leaks in here unless the fuel filter somehow is cracked, or this connector, that there's something wrong with it. But just to be sure, I won't cover it until we're done and this is operational. I've located the spot I want to put my riv nut to hold the pump. So that's right about there. So we're going to drill a hole there and put in a riv nut. And even before I put the riv nut in, hitting that with a little primer. So I don't want anything to rust, even on the edges. We're going to experiment with this new Riv Nut tool. If you like this, there's a link in the description. Pretty inexpensive, and hopefully it will work well. So it just attaches onto the drill. And we're going to use a 1/4-20 rib nut. I pretty much standardized in most places on the van using 1/4-20 size riv nuts. I did experiment with it when it first got here and just crushed down a riv nut. And this is the first time we're going to try it on a piece of material. And to make it easy to see, I'm going to drill a hole in this polycarbonate. Actually, one of these pieces is polycarbonate and one of them is plexiglass. Plexiglass is the one that is kind of a clear on the edge. So the one to the left is plexiglass. The one to the right that you see that is very dark on the edge, that's polycarbonate. Polycarbonate is what we want. It's better, it's flexible, and it's less likely to crack when you drill through it. So if you're working on your van build, always look for polycarbonate, not plexiglass or acrylic, but polycarbonate or Lexan works much better, because when you drill a hole, you're less likely to crack it and have it shatter on you. So I'm going to drill a hole here for our riv nut. Got a nice clean hole. Now, what size hole? Well, if you're doing your van build, you need to pick one of these up. It will tell you the size that you need for the riv nut, and you can just go and test each hole until you get the right size. And this is 23/64, and that's the size hole that I just drilled. It's also 0.359. So then we just take the riv nut, and the riv nut goes on the tool here. And of course we would take this and place it in the sheet metal, but in this case we're going to put it, the polycarbonate around it right there, and we're going to see if we can make a good demonstration. Wow. Actually, that was a little jerky, but it worked really well. It actually distorted the polycarbonate. And I'll also add that probably would have cracked if it was plexiglass. Then we'll take our handy dandy new toy here, this Riv Nut Tool, put it in our riv nut. Oop, wrong way. That was nice and neat. Wow, I like that. That worked out really well. One thing to note is I did swap out the hardware that came with this, and I'm using a stainless steel bolt, stainless steel washer, and lock washers for the installation. And I know I'm going to put this up here temporarily, make sure everything lines up right, and then I'll take it down and put the fuel line in. And then this is going to go like that, just to protect that from any road debris. Yeah, that works good. I think that lines up pretty good, just so nothing kicks up and hits it. I got my pump here, and I'm gonna put a little wax like I did before. I got some paste wax here, and I just sticking my finger in there and rubbing it on the end of this thing. Ooh, don't want to get it in the hole there, but just put a little paste wax on here just to make it easy to push this in, because without it, it's really difficult. So, and it's got to go all the way in until it stops, and then right up against there, and then I will tighten this down, and I need to go get a screwdriver and do that right now before I forget to do it. And I'm going to push this out just a little bit towards the edge, and I need to tighten that up so those two come together. And guys, let me tell you, if I don't go do that right now, I'll forget to do it, and that's where I'll have a leak. Alright, started it with the drill, and I'm going to finish it off by hand because I can feel the tightness and the torque. Alright, that's good. Now we're going to get the other side. Before I even do that, let's finish this off. Got my little protective cover here. Alright, so that side I would say is done. Now I got to do this side, but in order to do that I have to pull the fuel up through here, and I'm gonna put this in here first. Yep, I got it so it'll slide nice. And now I'm gonna put a syringe on here and pull the fuel out and get it primed. But once it starts going, then it's not gonna stop. So I'm gonna go put gloves on so I can do that. All right, I've got my syringe tube squeezed over the fuel line there. I got my syringe here. We're gonna try to pull that fuel through. Oh my gosh, that worked fast. All right, I'm gonna pull that fuel all the way up there. I definitely got fuel here. Happened much quicker than I expected. So I'm gonna pinch this off right here, pull this off, put my finger over this because the fuel is already coming out. Yep, and while that fuel is coming out, oh my goodness, get it in there. All right, I've seen other people do that, and they did a much neater job than I did. So that's how you do it. That way, the fuel is all the way right to the pump, and you're less likely to have errors when you try to first start the heater. So the fuel pump is now installed. Next is the electrical, and this is the fuel pump connector, and this of course only connects in one direction. So we're going to put that on here. So that just snaps in there. But the thing is, the fuel pump is right here, and they gave us a lot of cable, and we really only need, we actually don't need any length of cable. If this connector would plug into the fuel pump, I could connect it directly, but it doesn't work that way. The connector's not the same. So I have to spool this up, and I'm going to take and tuck it and zip tie it up under where that gas tank is. So that's what we're about to do. Under the ProMaster van, there are some holes that are perfect size for these 1/4 riv nuts. So we're going to use this tool right here and put one in. Woo-wee. Wow, that was quick and easy. What's nice about this tool is it fits under the van. If I use my manual tool, well, I'd probably have to jack up the van in order to have enough clearance. Wow, that's nice.
This is a muffler for the air intake. Now, I'm actually not buying this to act as a muffler. I'm buying it to ensure that no animals will actually build a nest inside the air intake, because we want to keep the critters out. You can also buy a muffler for the exhaust, but since I don't honestly expect to use this heater that often, I'm not going to buy the exhaust muffler, but I may do so in the future. So now we're going to go put this on. If you take a look at this air intake, it's actually 2 aluminum tubes. And I need to place this around the smaller tube. So I need to back this larger tube up. And what they did is they put a staple in here so that it would not slide off. So I need to remove that staple. See how easy is that going to be? All right, now I can just push it up. And of course, this has got to go on first. Our little muffler. There we go. And that's it. Now we're going to tuck this away and cable tie it. I'm going to take my air intake. I'm going to place it right up there behind the gas tank. Actually, just cable tie it right with these other bundle of wires. So my air intake is right behind the gas tank, and it's zip tied to the excess cables from the fuel pump. This is the shield for the gasoline fill on the Ram ProMaster. And as you move back here, this is where my fuel pump is, and the fuel pump wires and the fuel pump line. And right here is where my shield is going to go. And that's what we're putting in next. This is the polycarbonate shield that we're going to install. To install that shield, I'm removing the nuts from the fuel fill shield. Don't lose these nuts, they're difficult to find. I'll put the size on the screen. I believe it's M5 with a 1.6 thread pitch, which is very difficult to find. And this is simply going to go up like that. All right, that shield is there to protect this fuel pump from any debris knocking up and hitting it. I don't know anybody else who has actually put something in here, a shield like this, but I think it's important because I'm not going to be thinking about what I'm driving over, and I won't be thinking about fuel lines running under here. But it protects the fuel pump, the fuel lines, and then the fuel lines are quickly protected by the undercarriage of the van. The final electrical setup for the heater, I've got the power cable that goes to the heater tucked in this little side hole of the van. So when I want to use it, I can pull it out. I've got the Anderson connector on this side, and then tucked up here is the power to the batteries. Also have an Anderson connector on that. These two plug together and I'll have power to my heater. But most of the time, I'm not going to use the heater, so I'll unplug it because there's no reason to power it at all or have any current loss when I'm not using the heater. Now, the benefit to putting this way at the back of the van is I've got a 12-volt source here. So if I ever want to test anything out, I can plug right into this Anderson connector. Now, I made myself a simple little cable here with the Anderson type connector on one end and these Wago connectors. That way it makes it nice and easy for me to plug in and test any 12-volt device out. So hopefully this idea kind of helps you guys out. I always recommend testing devices out before you go through the process of the installation, because you'd hate to install it and discover it doesn't work. The installation is complete. I've got my plexiglass shield here, which protects the fuel pump, which is right here. The electrical for the fuel pump is here. This is the fuel line. The electrical for the fuel pump, there's a lot of extra cord, and that's zip tied up and tucked up here. The cold air, fresh air intake for the heater is right here. All I did was zip tie that up here so that it's far away from the hot exhaust. This right here is the emergency brake cable. I repositioned that a little bit. You can see right here I added a piece to move that brake cable down a little bit. This hot exhaust comes back here, and that exhaust is held up right here by one of the mounts with the Riv Nut, and then it travels down further. And this mount is a little bit lower because we need this to gradually be lower so that any condensation will drip out. This mount right here, it drops down about an inch so that this is a little bit lower than the first mount, so that the condensation will hopefully continue to flow and drip out. All right, it's our first time turning it on with the app, and it just started up. 59 degrees, the set temperature is 84, 13 volts. It went through its startup diagnostics, and now it is providing heat. And that is 135 degrees, 136. Wow, that's pretty neat. And that is 140. Let's go check out the exhaust. Exhaust is 107, 125. The tip of that is 215, 220 degrees. Wow. I'm in the van. It is set to make the temperature 84 degrees in here. Right now it's 60. And the temperature of that unit is 260 degrees. 265, 282. This outside plastic case is 150. 160. So the center is up to 300 degrees. The outside plastic case about 170. This part is very warm. This is pretty cool back here.
Really warm there. Warm on the sides. It's warm, but I can put my hands here. Now I need to make a ducting that will go in here to direct it. The heater's installed. I just finished installing the vent. This goes down from 4 inches down to 3 inches, and it comes out right on this side, right next to the shower, and that's the vent right there. And what I did here was I created a partition. This here supports the cover, which you'll see in a minute, and then I made a partition here because the rest of this area we use for storage, and typically what we end up storing in there are 2-liter bottles of soda and cans of soda, so we don't want them to get overheated and possibly explode. This channel right here is the channel for the partition doors, which I have to reinstall, and I'll show you those right at the end. And this support here is for this panel, which goes right on top. And again, that there right here, that channel is for the partition doors. And then this cover flips down, and this is some non-skid tape. I need to put another strip down here for the rug that goes on top of this. Installation is complete. I just vacuumed out our little storage area here. The plans for this footrest are online. There's a link in the video description if you'd like to make a footrest like this for the ProMaster. It works out really well, and it's been very popular. So this goes down. In the center there, you can see I've got a sheet of plywood, and that's to eliminate the squishy floor. And we've got a piece of rug that goes down here. And then a piece of rug that goes, this piece of rug goes right here. Kind of getting around the camera there. And then this piece of rug goes right here, just like that. Then when we want to use the partition, all we have to do is flip this up, flip this section under, and put it down. And then the partition wall simply slides closed. I love that. It provides privacy when we're sleeping at night, and everybody believes this is a construction van. And then simply closes. So, turned out really good. Really like the installation, and I think it's going to be awesome.